Canada only owns 3% of its national railways, and the remaining are privately owned by monopolies of companies. A lot of people blame only Via Rail for what is going on, but it's way much deeper than that. In this video, we're going to be deeping down into the monopolies, the policies, what is going on. Canadian trains are extremely expensive, they're always late, and often they don't deliver. To really understand the train system and the railway system in Canada, you have to look at two companies. You have the Canadian National Railway, short for CN, and also you have the Canadian Pacific. And now it is the Canadian Pacific Kansas City, CPKC. These two companies almost own 100% all the rails in the country. Canadian National Railway was a crown corporation until 1995 when it went to an initial public offering. Basically went to the Toronto Stock Exchange. They raised $2.25 billion, which was the largest initial public offering in the history of the Canadian market. Canadian Pacific was founded in 1881 and it went to the stock exchange in New York in 1883. It was the first non-US company that joined the New York Stock Exchange at that time. So these two companies mainly own the trails, the locomotives, the signaling, pretty much the entire infrastructure that the trains in Canada rely on to operate. And Canadian Pacific acquired Kansas City Southern for $31 billion, so they changed the name from CP to CPKC, which just stands for Canadian Pacific and Kansas City. CPKC, it is bigger than CN. It connects 20,000 miles, and it's the only provider, the only railway in North America that connects Mexico, the US, and Canada. Because CPCK and CN are owned by institutional investors and even retail investors, that means they're for maximum profit company. The real problem that Canada faces is that these two are duopoly that own pretty much the entire railways in the country, so they can set whatever prices they want. Now going to Via Rail, which is the company that people blame the most because it has a lot of problems, but you have to dig a little bit deeper to understand what is going on. So Via Rail, first of all, owns only 3%. Only 3%, you heard it right, of all the rails they operate on. So they have to rent roughly 97% from CN mainly and CPKC. Another big problem for the Via Rail system is that they are a hostage of the freight, meaning whenever there is a freight, they have a priority of pass. So CN and CPKC made a clear rule that whenever we have a freight, it has the right of the way. So that's why you see a lot of Via Rail trains waiting many times, many minutes, sometimes even hours for these freight to pass along. And that leads to massive latency. Those are the numbers that we have. In 2011, the on-time rate of Via Rail was 84%, pretty much standard. Now that same number went down to 56% on-time rate in 2022. But it gets worse because it went down to, get this, 20% in December 2024 after CN implemented a new rule of speed. So that added another 40% decrease. I think there's a lot of things going on into this. So it's a duopoly owned by a bunch of companies, and then you have a small company that is trying to make a profit. So Via Rail, it is subsidized by the government with a cost cap mandate, meaning they are mandated by the government to recoup the subsidy. The way it works is this: these two companies set up the prices for a national company like Via Rail. 2024, Via Rail generated $480 million in revenue. Pretty decent. Well, not really, because the net loss was $385, and that was an operational loss. It was not a capital expenditure or anything like that. It was a straight operational loss because they are not profitable, because they couldn't figure out any way to make money out of it. And whenever there is a deficit, taxpayers get the bill, which could be understandable because running this corporation is a lot of headache to the government. What the government actually failed is that in the regulation part, but also they failed in finding a competitive space for other national railways to get into this. Because if you're a small farmer in Saskatchewan, you literally have no other choice but CN or CPKC. It surprised a lot of people that 81% of Via Rail money, meaning income, comes from 3 cities. That's Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto network. So you have a corridor that is connected to these cities, making the most amount of money, and the rest is pretty much not that lucrative. That's why you see the train from Toronto to Vancouver, which is one of the longest trains in the world, roughly 95 hours. It is not that profitable. Not that many people are taking the train. That means the lease of these railways is not making a lot of profit for Via Rail. Because if you take a closer look, most of Via Rail's money comes from Quebec to Toronto. Pretty much it. There's a lot of conversation happening about Via Rail as a company, crowd corporation, also about the future of the railways in Canada, whether it's a possibility to demonopolize this setup. I'm very curious what you guys think about Via Rail as a company, the future of the railways in Canada and in general. What do you guys think? Leave that in the comments. My name is Alex. If you like this kind of videos, subscribe for many more videos like this.